Welcome to Guiding Echoes, the show that loves to inspire and empower you to awaken your intuitive abilities and develop your psychic skills. I'm your host, Nicole Antoinette. Join me as we dive into exciting topics such as spirit communication, energy healing, intuition, consciousness, and so much more. The fun begins right now. Welcome. Happy Tuesday, everyone. You are listening to 105.3 FM New Orleans on the UPRN network. My name is Nicole Antoinette. I am your host this evening, and you are listening to the Guiding Echo Show. So as usual, we have a wonderful lineup for you tonight. We're starting off with, of course, Guiding Echoes. After that, we'll have Discovery Paranormal, followed by Chasing Prophecy, followed by Into the Night with Sean Kelly. Today's guest is Kate from Daily Tarot Girl on YouTube. And if you have been watching tarot readings for quite some time on YouTube, you have definitely come across Kate's channel. She and I are part of that first wave of psychics and tarot readers that ever hit the YouTube platform. And so her and I, we have a special bond, and I'm so excited to have her as a guest, and she will be coming on to join us a little later today. Also wanted to remind you that you can join me live in the chat by going to youtube.com/Guiding Echoes, or of course you can visit us on the Guiding Echoes Facebook page. When you join us in the chat, it gives you the opportunity to join the conversation, so you can ask me or Kate any questions that you want, and we can just continue building this wonderful community, having a great conversation, and of course your contributions to this show through your questions and comments is always very much appreciated, so long as you're not spamming the chat and telling people, hey, come to my website and buy a reading from me. That's not cool. We've been getting a lot of those scammers lately. By the way, just so you guys know, there's been quite a scam on Instagram. The scam on Instagram. Look at that. I'm a poet and didn't know it. So there's been this horrible thing happening on Instagram for quite some time now, where a psychic or a medium's or a tarot card reader's account is being cloned, and the cloned account will reach out to the followers of the original account. Am I making sense so far? Is anyone lost on this yet? The cloned account is ran by scammers, and so I have over 20 cloned accounts that scammers have started in my name, and they're reaching out to people pretending to be me. And so they will message you and they will ask you to send a certain amount of money to some completely random email address. And when you look at their Instagram handle, you're going to notice that there is an extra letter or there's a dash. There's just going to be something that is off with the name. So before you give anyone your money on Instagram or even on Facebook, be sure that you take a look at the spelling of the name and ask yourself, do I really think that this tarot card reader or psychic medium or whoever this person's presenting themselves to be, do I really think that they're going to reach out to me and ask me to give them money? Or are they going to trust me to just go to their website? So just be aware of that scam. I've had several of my own friends and clients fall for it, where they thought someone was me and they paid for a reading, and it's an unfortunate thing that happens. And sometimes you'll actually get a reading from the scammer pretending to be whoever it is that they're pretending to be. Sometimes they'll still give that reading, and sometimes they'll just take your money and go. And I've heard reports of PayPal and other payment gateways not doing anything about it. So be smart, be careful. And again, if a well-known tarot card reader or psychic or whoever reaches out to you on any social media platform, double check, because it could be a fake. And I want you guys to be aware of that, and be smart with your purchases. Know who you're talking to and know what you're doing. All right. So now that we got that PSA out of the way, I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys the energies of the week. So before I came on here today, I did spend some time in meditation, and I did ask the universe what the message was for this week. And there's been some interesting talk in psychic communities over the past few days. where a lot of us, I guess you could say, our spidey senses are going off. There is this feeling in the air that something's about to happen, and none of us really know what that is going to be. And you have one camp that says, okay, well, this is a little scary, but through light and love and meditation, we can change the trajectory of this. And then the other camp is saying, whatever's coming is coming, we can't stop it. I believe that maybe there's something in the middle. I believe that there's middle grounds, but I also kind of think that there's middle grounds in everything, in politics, relationships, everything. I'm a firm believer in middle grounds. So I do believe that if we are able to pour out loving energy, that we can, if we can't change the trajectory of what's coming completely, we can at least send out, I believe, enough healing energy into the world to, I want to say, diminish the poor effects of it. I do believe that if we all had more of a heads up of what was going to happen in 2020, maybe we could have changed the trajectory of that. Maybe, who knows? There's a fascinating book called The Science of Channeling by Dr. You know what? I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, because unless I have it written in front of me, I always mispronounce it. But The Science of Channeling is written by the lead researcher of the Institute of Noetic Science. And she talks about the different research and tests and studies and laboratory experiments that they've done on thought experiments. And so they have been able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that your consciousness and intention can change material things, but can also change the outcome of different experiences as well. So I find that to be completely fascinating. So that said, when I was tuning in to the energy of basically just the collective, and I was asking the universe, what's the message for this week? What I heard is that this is the week for us to really pour our energy back into the world, back into the things that we love. And so I want you to think about that word for a minute. Like, what does the word love actually mean to you? Because I believe we all have different ways that we interpret that word. For me, when I think about something I love, it's something that brings me joy, or it's a person that brings me joy. Like, I love chocolate and I love my friends. And, I'm a woman. Of course, I love chocolate, right? That goes without saying. So there's just certain things that I love because they bring me joy. But there's other things that I love, such as doing psychic readings for people, because I believe that brings purpose. That brings a form of healing. And so that is something I'm passionate about. And when I was tuning into this message of pouring your love back into the world, not into the earth, into the world. So think about that. Like, where in the world can you pour your precious energy? What resources need your energy? When I thought about pouring your energy into the things that you love, the thing that came to mind was that energy can come in so many different emotional tides and different emotional waves. So that energy can actually be anger, which sounds weird, because a lot of times when we think of anger, we think of that as being a very destructive emotion. However, what's interesting is that anger a lot of times can be the emotion, a very powerful emotion that causes you to make waves, that causes you to make some big changes. For example, if you've been in a relationship that you're unhappy with, it might take you getting angry to finally put your foot down and make big changes and leave. If you're in a job where the people around you are maybe teasing you, or you know that they're being highly unethical, it may take you being angry to walk out the door, or to turn your company, or whatever it is that's necessary. And that's not destructive in a bad way. That's destructive in a good way, because those behaviors and that energy needs to end. And it's only when that energy ends that we're able to create something new. So think about that for a moment. So when you love something and you're pouring that energy into it, it can be that you're pouring joy into it. It can be that you're pouring passion, compassion, kindness into it. And we don't necessarily need to have just one area of focus for this. There can be several. A lot of you listening to this right now, you're parents, you have maybe young kids or grown kids, and you love them. So being able to pour your energy into them is one way of pouring your energy into the world. Maybe there is an environmental cause that is near and dear to your heart. Maybe there is an old building that you just feel drawn to and you want to help with the reconstruction of that. There's so many different ways that we can pour good energy into the world. And if each of us were to take the time to do this daily, even if it were just something small, think about the significant impact we would see. And I know that's hard to do because so many times we get caught up in our own lives, but what we're really getting caught up in is fear. We're getting caught up with fear. And I believe that's why this message came through about shift your focus onto the things you love. So many of us, and I'm guilty of it too, we pour our energy into the things that we fear, and then we start reacting instead of responding. And so when we're able to change our focus from what we fear to what we love, we can also notice that our emotional well-being starts to feel better because we're acting out of love and not fear. We also notice that our actions are making a positive difference in something, a positive change in something. And we can also walk with our head held higher. We can also move through the world with more confidence because we know that what we're doing doesn't just affect us in a good way. Because whenever we pour into something that we're passionate about, that we love, we feel good about that. But we can also feel good that we're pouring into the world in a way that is completely positive. And so that is the message that I channeled for you today. And I would love for you to just take a few moments at some point during this evening and really ask yourself, how can you pour into this world? What do you love? What are you passionate about? How can you do this in small ways? It doesn't have to be big ways, in small ways daily. So that is the message. I'm going to do my best to try this out. I'm going to make a plan later today on the different ways that I want to pour my energy into the world. And I do believe that all of us have the ability to change the energy that we've all been feeling lately, because I know that for a lot of us, we've been going through some stuff, right? We've been feeling the weirdness and everything. So that is the energy of the week. And with that, I would love to segue over into my next guest. So today's guest is Kate. Again, she is the Daily Tarot Girl. You have definitely seen her on YouTube if you have looked up different tarot readings at any point in time. Her and I were part of that first wave of psychics and tarot card readers that hit YouTube nearly a decade ago. I can hardly believe it's been that long. Kate is not just a fantastic and gifted tarot card reader. She's highly intuitive, and she is also a teacher of tarot. She loves to show people how they can use tarot to benefit their own life and to do readings for others. And so with that, I'd love to welcome her onto the show. So Kate, hi.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you here today. So tell us a little bit more about how the Daily Tarot Girl got started on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I think I started my channel, I think it was 11 years ago. I'll have to go back and look, but I think it's been over 10 years now. And, one day I'd been studying tarot for not that long, a few years, maybe 3 years or so, 4 years. And I just had this like very subtle urge to start a YouTube channel. And I just started it really for my own practice. So I started uploading kind of practice videos of me giving readings, and my channel started to get traction. And I noticed that when I started to upload weekly readings, those videos were really popular. So I still do those now. And it just kind of grew from there. And after a couple of years, I started my business, which is doing tarot readings and teaching people how to read tarot. And so it kind of one thing sort of led to another.
So why do you like teaching tarot? How did that start to form?
Yeah. So when I first got into tarot, I was all about giving people readings. Like I was totally fixated on just doing that. And a friend of mine at the time said, "Hey, I'm really interested in learning tarot. Can you teach me a few things about it?" So I said, "Sure." So I sat down with him and I attempted to teach him some things about tarot, and I realized I was a really, really, really bad teacher, and and I don't think I inspired him in any way to learn tarot. I think I completely turned him off of of reading tarot, and but there was something about that experience of sitting with him and attempting to teach him that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, I want to get good at teaching people how to do this. And I also started to realize that the value of tarot, it's not just in getting tarot readings or giving readings. There is this whole process that happens when you start to study the tarot, when you get your first deck, when you look through the cards, when you study the symbols and the archetypes, when you start a tarot journal and you start meditating with the cards. There's this whole like fascinating process that starts to unfold. And it's not like the whole idea of giving people readings or getting readings, that's just like a tiny, tiny part of tarot. That's just a really small part of it. And there's really this whole magical journey that can unfold when you start working with the cards, like for yourself, when you just start your own tarot practice. And so I get really excited when I think about helping people on their tarot journey and helping people discover tarot. And I think that tarot is one of those things that is kind of intimidating for a lot of people when they first discover it because it seems so daunting. There's so many cards. There's 78 cards. There's so many books on the subject, and there's so many layers to tarot as well. There's the major arcana, the minor arcana, the court cards. There's the whole thing of like connecting the cards in a reading. There's tarot spreads. There's symbols. Like there's so many different aspects to it that I think it's really easy to really get overwhelmed. And so my whole thing with teaching is to try to kind of simplify it and make tarot seem like this really fun, accessible thing that isn't this like big, daunting, confusing thing to learn.
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right, because it can seem very intimidating when you first look at all the different cards. And like you said, there's the major arcana, there's the minor arcana, there's the four suits within the minor arcana. And being able to simplify it is so important, because once you have that foundation set, you can start to add those layers that are a little deeper and a little more complicated and add more depth to a tarot reading, whether it is something that you're doing for yourself, reading your own cards, or reading for someone else. So, want to give a shout out real quick to Pisces Tarot 1981. Thank you very much for the super sticker. Anytime you give a super chat or super sticker or super anything to this channel, it helps us to keep these shows going. Now, there was a question that came up in the chat. This is from Deborah, and she says, "I have a question for the group." So this is for the group. We're going to ask Kate, but in the feel free to chime in the chat as well. So Deborah says, "I have a question for the group. If I read cards for someone and they take my words to heart, how does that affect, if at all, my karma?"
Oh, interesting. I don't know. That's a big question. How does it affect your karma? I feel like I'm not a huge believer in karma in the way that I think most people think of karma. But I understand the question. And I think that this just highlights how important it is to, number one, whenever I give someone a reading, I do like to make it clear that, you know, I'm just giving suggestions, and we're doing this reading to get ideas, to get inspired, to kind of find new ways of approaching a situation. I don't like to give a reading where I'm like, this means this, you've got to do this. Like, I don't like doing readings that are like really concrete advice giving necessarily. For that reason, is that, you know, I don't, first of all, I don't think that I'm the expert. I think people are the experts in their own lives. I'm the expert on tarot, I guess. So as a reader, I think it's your responsibility to interpret the cards to the best of your ability.
Mhm.
But I think the question highlights the importance, number one, to not to be kind of open-ended in your readings. I think, like, I again, I like to think of readings as kind of giving suggestions and ideas, and I like to see it more as like an exploratory process rather than like, here's a definite list of things that you must do because of
Right.
this reading. Yeah, and I think also I always, as a reader, I think it's important to frame things in the most positive way that we can, not necessarily sugarcoating it or doing a reading that's sappy sweet, but I mean, framing it in a way that's going to feel empowering to the person you're giving the reading for. So presenting options and choices and things like that in your reading. I know that doesn't totally answer the question, but those are my thoughts on that topic.
No, and that makes sense. Also, Meredith Mercer said, Kate makes tarot fun. So
Oh,
I
thank you,
agree. I
Meredith.
agree, Meredith. Yeah, and one of the things to keep in mind, and this is something that a friend actually pointed out to me a couple years ago, is that when people come to you for a tarot reading, they also need to be responsible for the questions that they're asking. So if they don't have the emotional capacity to deal with an answer that they don't like, that's on them. That's not necessarily on you, because you are there to be a channel for them, and they are trusting you, or they should be trusting you to present the truth about the situation in the way that you feel it and see it in the cards. Now, of course, that's not everyone's intention when they go to a tarot reading. A lot of times people go to a psychic because they want to hear everything's going to be okay. They go to a therapist when they're ready to change. So when they go to a psychic and or a tarot card reader, and as a reader, you're looking at your cards and you're noticing that the person that you're reading for has a lot of blocks, maybe is lying to themselves, and you do your best, as Kate said, to present that in a way that, obviously you don't want to be judgmental towards them or making accusations, but you present the problem as you see it in the best way possible, in the most compassionate light as you can, and maybe present some advice in the message that you're giving to them. That's really the best way to go about it. And as far as how a tarot reading affects your karma when you're giving a tarot card reading, I think that it's the same as how anything affects your karma. Your karma is affected by everything you do in the world. At least that's the belief on karma, right? Like every action has a reaction. Everything that you do has a cause and effect. So when you're doing tarot readings, if you're doing it out of love, and if you're doing it out of respect, and you're doing it because you really believe that this is the way that you can offer healing and compassion and answers into a very chaotic world, then I think that that gives you bonus points in your karma. Like, it's a good thing. So as long as you're always acting in a way that is ethic and you're standing in integrity, I think that only good can come out of it for you. Even if the person doesn't like your reading and gets upset, as long as you delivered the message in the best way that you can, with truth and compassion and love, you can't really ask for anything more. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said.
Thank you. I also want to thank Auntie Coco for the $20 super sticker. Very much appreciated. Again, like every time you guys are able to contribute to this channel, it helps me to continue to to bring you great shows like this one and have wonderful guests like Kate. So very thank you very much. Let's see. Joshua is also saying karmic laws with readings are about intention. Yes, I completely agree with that. So moving on a little bit more, when it comes to tarot, what traits do you think someone needs to have in order to be a good tarot reader?
Oh, I think that they should be curious. I think having a natural curiosity is helpful. Because the cards themselves don't always give answers. And I think a lot of people come to a reading, or they say they're coming for the reading because they want clarity on it,
Right.
on a particular issue. But the cards sometimes don't give clarity. They sometimes ask more questions than they give. And so I think that being able to look at the cards and find the right kinds of questions to ask your client can be helpful. And just naturally being curious is an important trait to have, I think, as a reader. Being open-minded and being willing to kind of set aside everything that you know about tarot and just approaching the cards with an open mind. That's how you read intuitively. If
Yes.
you have all the like card meanings, anchored in your head when you look at the cards, then you're just going to see those meanings and it's not going to lead to a very interesting reading usually. But if you put all that just to the side, so it's like having, it's almost like you don't want to totally forget it. It's there in case you need it, but you're not going to let the book meanings kind of dictate everything you say. And just being able to kind of forget about that and look at the cards with an open mind and see where you're guided. Are you drawn to one card right away? Does one aspect of that card jump out at you? Do you feel like you want to speak to one of the figures on the cards? Like just being really kind of creative and open-minded when you're reading. I think that's a really important trait to have. And compassion. I think if you're giving readings for other people, even if you're just reading for yourself, being able to be really compassionate, I think, is another really important trait.
I completely agree with you on, especially on the compassion part, because that's something I've noticed with a lot of different readers is they try to be like, I don't think cutthroat is the right term, but they want to be cut and dry, like black and white. And when people are coming to you for a reading, and even when you're throwing cards down for yourself, it's because you have a situation that you care about, that you're passionate about. And so when someone trusts you enough to come to you and say, like, this is the problem, or this is my hope, or this is my dream, like, am I on the right track? Are things going to work out? You have to keep in mind that you're not just working with that person's answers. They have trusted you with their heart and with the thing that is most precious to them. And yeah, so compassion, I think, is definitely very important. Um, so Marla's asking a question. She'd like to know, what is the difference between tarot cards and angel cards?
Yeah, so angel cards typically are like oracle cards that have an angel theme. So they're oracle cards with pictures of angels on them. Whereas tarot cards follow the tarot system. So tarot, no matter what type of tarot deck you get, because there's all different themed tarot decks, but if it says tarot, it probably follows the tarot structure. So there's going to be major arcana cards, minor arcana cards. There's going to be 78 cards usually. Some decks will do an extra card. There's going to be the 4 suits, and the 4 suits are pentacles, swords, cups, and wands. And some tarot decks will rename those suits, but the suit qualities, stay the same. And each card will have kind of a general meaning in the tarot. And so that's going to be, that structure is going to be there no matter what tarot deck you're using. Whereas oracle cards, which is what angel cards are,
Right.
oracle cards are there's no specific structure. It's just a deck of cards with images. Some oracle cards have writing on them, some do not, but it doesn't follow any specific structure. It's kind of more free form and more open to, whoever creates the deck can basically do what they want. And so angel cards are oracle cards with angels on them. And a lot of people that use angel cards believe that they're sort of tapping into the angelic realm by using those cards. Whereas with tarot cards, I guess you're not, unless you set the intention to do that beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So switching a little bit from tarot, because I know you also like to talk about consciousness and energy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So Rose Lily asks a question. Well, she didn't ask a question. She more or less made a statement that I thought would be fun for us to talk about, because as tarot readers, we can kind of deal with the same thing. So Rose Lily says, I'm a hairstylist and I pick up on everybody's feelings throughout the day. So she's also an empath. When I come home, I'm not just exhausted from doing hair. I'm exhausted from everybody else's energy. Oh man, Rose Lily, I know Kate and I can feel you on that one. So what are some good grounding tips or just tips in general that can help people when they are exhausted from other people's energies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I struggle with this too. I notice that when I am giving a lot of readings, I start to feel energetically drained. And I have a bunch of practices I do that kind of help me with that. But even with doing those practices, I still experience that feeling of just exhaustion. Energetic exhaustion. I like to do something called, I think it's called 12th dimensional shielding, where you sort of, if you type it into YouTube, there's some great guided meditations, but you basically sort of envision, you kind of build this pillar of light around you, and it's meant to kind of act as a shield that kind of protects you from other people's energy so that you don't get overwhelmed. So I like to do that. I find physical activity to be really, really grounding. So like making sure I work out or do some kind of exercise every single day. I find that really gets me in my body, and it helps me discharge any energy that isn't helpful that I need to get rid of. Yeah. Even though and I'm thinking of if you're a hairdresser and you're working with people all day, you might come home at the end of the day and feel physically exhausted. But even when I'm feeling physically exhausted, even if I just do something for 20 minutes, I start to feel more energized. There's something that happens where I can kind of discharge some of that energy. So those are the two things that I find most helpful.
Yeah. And then also, of course, there's a basic grounding technique where if you have the ability to stand in the grass, which, on cold days or wet days, you probably don't want to, but when you can put your bare feet in the grass and you can envision all that energy that you took on from other people and you can pour it into the earth, allow your body to drain of it and shoot it into the earth can transmute it just like it does with manure, with fertilizers. So I know a lot of people feel bad about giving, quote unquote, bad energy to the earth. But you don't have to feel bad about that because the earth knows how to transmute everything. And that's what it does. That's a big part of what the earth does. So that's another thing that that people can try as well. All right. So Trevor is asking, can you touch upon reversals? I always want to tear them up or turn them upright. Okay, let me try this again. Can you touch upon reversals? I always want to turn them upright, but I have mixed vibes about doing that. So what do you think, Kate? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I don't really read reversals. I shuffle my cards in a way so that they always appear right side up when I read them. And I do that because I find it really hard to read a card when the image is upside down. I just can't connect with the image when it's upside down. And I find that some people like reversals because when you read with reversals, it complicates things, but it also gives you kind of a wider array of possible meanings and messages. I find it just to be kind of overwhelming, and I feel like it doesn't really add much. I've experimented with reading with reversals and not reading with reversals, and I find I just like reading all the cards upright.
Yeah.
So that's my take on reversals. I don't bother doing it. It can be fun to kind of play around with it. I mean, I would encourage people to experiment and try reading with reversals. Usually a reversed card, there's different ways of reading a reverse card. Sometimes depending on what card it is, it doesn't really change the meaning of that card. Like, for example, let's say you get the sun reversed. It could still, the meaning doesn't change, but maybe the energy is just not as strong. Sometimes it can represent a blockage in that particular area. So let's say you get temperance reversed. It could show that something's out of balance, that you need more balance. Yeah, so there's different ways of seeing a reversed or reading a reversed card, but I tend to avoid it.
Yeah. And I'm starting to kind of move towards that train of thought as well when it comes to reversals, because I used to read them all the time. Like, it used to be, oh, no big deal. And then I started diving into reversals a little bit more and learned all the different ways you can read them. I was like, wait a second, mind blown. And it just got to the point where I'm like, I kind of want to keep things simple. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when you read intuitively, or even when your own psychic awareness grows, whether a card is in reverse or upside, or whether it's in reverse or right side up, it almost doesn't matter, because you kind of tune into the flow of the cards and also the energy of the client, to the point where you're not really reading the cards so much, like you're reading the energy that they disperse. And so I find that, so I'm starting to find more and more that I don't really like reading with reversals anymore, because I was taught in the beginning, when I first learned how to read tarot, that it's like having extra cards in your deck, because it gives you more meanings, right? It gives you more to play with. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, but those seem to be so limited, though, because when a card is in reverse, it's either telling you you're stuck here or you're blocked here, and that's a very limited belief. And I think sometimes it's helpful to know where a block is, because maybe your own subconscious mind or the subconscious mind of the person you're working with hasn't really realized that there's a block there. But for the most part, I think that you, as a reader or an experienced reader, can kind of figure that out on your own, whether the card is reversed or not. And then also, I think it's always much less intimidating for the client when you're reading their cards and looking at them. Like, I've seen quite a few people like freak out when a card was in reverse, even if the reverse card meant something good. So it's
Right,
just
yeah.
kind of a nice way to. It's almost like a reversal is putting a knot in the reading, and so not turning them, not reading reversals and then also turning the cards right side up is kind of like taking the knot out of the reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Man, we've got so many great questions coming in for you. And then also, I just want to remind everyone that you can join us through YouTube or Facebook. It's a wonderful way to put your comments in here, put your questions in here, so that Kate and I can answer them for you. And Angelic Michelle, who said she's taken all of your classes, is asking, when is Kate's next class?
Oh, thanks for asking. It's going to be coming really soon. So I haven't set a date of when I'm going to run it. I think I'm going to run my next class in October, and it's going to be on how to read the cards intuitively. And it's a really fun class. It's a 4-week class, and I'm really looking forward to run. I've run it a few times, and this might be my 5th or 6th time running it. And I'm going to offer that probably in October. And I'll
Nice.
promote it in kind of September.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. So over the past, I'd say it's really been over the last 3 years, there's been this explosion in the popularity of tarot. And I remember when I first started reading tarot over 10 years ago, God, I can't even believe it's been that long. It wasn't that popular. It was not as popular as it is now. So what do you think has contributed to this, I want to say, revival of this divination system?
I've noticed a huge revival in like metaphysical kind of earth-based, kind of witchy stuff. I've
Yeah.
just noticed like more and more stores popping up, lots of books out there. Like it just seems like there's a huge thirst for that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And tarot specifically, I've noticed too, when I first discovered tarot, it was still a very fringy thing. I didn't know anyone who was into it. And now when you tell people that you know, read tarot, they're like, oh yeah, I've got a deck. Like almost everyone has a tarot deck, it feels like. So I think that part of it is that we're sort of entering more uncertain times. I
Yeah.
think that in like the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, I don't think people felt so uncertain about the future as they do now. I feel like things really feel up in the air and uncertain for a lot of people. And I think that when you feel that uncertainty, I think that you want to find a way to get answers and to feel a sense of support and stability. And so I think that that's why people kind of are gravitating to these sort of new new old ways of getting that certainty. And
Right.
I think there's also like the thing with tarot and with other forms of spirituality or magic or whatever. I think that there is this journey of connecting with yourself more deeply. And I
Hmm.
think that's something that people are thirsting for too. I think people are thirsting for more meaning and
Yeah.
connection. And I think that studying tarot is one way of finding that. And that's actually what attracted me to tarot first, as I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be able to give people readings and really connect with someone on a deeper level than I'm used to? Because prior to learning tarot, my interactions with people were just, conversations. And
Sure.
conversations can be really deep, but there's something that happens when you give someone a reading where they really open up to you. They share what's on their mind, what's really important to them, and it allows you to kind of go a little bit deeper than you normally would with just like a regular conversation. And I think that that promise of being able to connect with someone really spoke to me, and that was one of the things that really attracted me to learn tarot. Yeah. Why do you think it's exploded in popularity?
I think it's similar to what you said. I think people want answers.
Mhm.
I think that when people are scared and the old religion isn't working for them, they start looking for other avenues. And for centuries, we know that certain religions, with all of their dogma and their rules and their methods of connecting, work for some people, but not for everyone, because it's too strict and it's too stringent. And I think a lot of religions attempt to be spiritual, but they rely so much on tradition. And in so many religions, you have this hierarchy, and people have to go through that hierarchy to get answers from God or the universe or whatever it is. And so, in that way, I think religions kind of strip people of their power and of their ability to connect with the creator or source or energy or spirit guides or whatever they believe in one on one. And so, when you're able to learn a divination system such as tarot, or even working with runes or crystal ball or whatever people feel called to, that allows people to connect on their own. And I think that people prefer tools as opposed to their own, trusting their own intuition. Because in the beginning, trusting your own intuition can be really scary, especially if you're not getting enough synchronicities and validation. And I think there's something about having something physical that we can hold on to that represents the spirit world, or that represents something, from the what is it, the ethic field. And so our etheric, I'm saying that word wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say. Ethereal, why can I not say that word right now? Anyways, brain fart. So, but
Girl.
being, but being able to hold on to something in physical form that represents that spiritual world that we so want to touch, that we want to believe in. And I think that I think tarot's one way of doing that. And then also, one of the things that's wonderful about tarot is a lot of people who do practice tarot or get tarot readings frequently, they are the ones who start to see a lot more synchronicities, or they get validation of their reading in some way, shape, or form. And so I think in a lot of ways it feels more surreal, it feels more powerful, but it puts the power of connecting with God back into your hands. So I think that's what people are starting to find.
Yeah.
Got a little deep there, sorry. So Rose Lily is saying, Kate, we need your link. So how can people find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on my website, dailytarotgirl.com. And you can also find me on my YouTube channel, Daily Tarot Girl. And yeah, that's how you can find me. I think, Nicole, you said my links will be sort of below our interview.
Okay. Yeah, so they are in the video description. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, all of the links are there. And then if you are watching, or if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you might be tuning in, whether this is the replay or you are listening to this live somewhere other than the radio, all of the information should be there. So Pamela has a great question. She's asking, how do gemstones help while reading tarot?
Oh, I love this question. I love crystals, and whenever I'm doing a reading, I like to have at least one or two big rocks on my reading table, and I feel like they just bring this beautiful magical energy to my reading space. And I mean, there's different ways to work with crystals. You can program them, you can set intentions with them. I don't do any of that stuff. I just choose a crystal that I really like, that really speaks to me, and I just have it on my reading table. And I feel like it just kind of supports me in the work of accessing my intuition and connecting with the person that I'm reading for. So that's how I use crystals. I wish I could give like a more detailed, more interesting answer than that, than just they're pretty and I like the having them. But that's what I do with them.
Hey, it works. Well, and like we were talking earlier, when it comes to reading tarot, you want to keep things simple, right? Because that just makes it easier. And it can be the same thing with crystals. So if a crystal is calling to you, you don't necessarily have to know the who's wise and where it was mined and all that kind of stuff. You just know, like, hey, this is giving me a good vibration. It's helping me with my reading. That's all I need to know. So we have a question from Shauna B. She is asking, is there a limit to the cards you lay down to read at once?
I've seen some readers who will go through the whole deck in a reading. They'll just like lay down a bunch of cards, read them really quickly, and keep throwing cards. That's like a particular style of reading that I've never read that way myself. I feel like less is more. Because I'm the kind of person who gets overwhelmed really easily. So I feel like when I'm looking at a huge spread with a lot of cards, it can be overwhelming. So the most I personally would read with is 9 cards. I love doing 9-card readings. I also love doing 1-card readings. I like starting with 1 card, and then if I need to do more, I'll do 1 more, and then maybe another one. I don't think there's any limit, though. I think you could use the whole deck if that's the kind of style of reading that appeals to you. I think if you're new to tarot, though, I think less is more, and you want to start with less cards and then kind of add more as you feel comfortable.
I agree. Yeah. And I think that's always a really good way to go. Like for me, my favorite spread is actually only 4 cards. It's a 4-card spread. And I find that you don't really need more than that when it comes, because people so often they're asking about a future event. And so like a simple 3-card or 4-card can give them all the information that they need. And when you start to remember and realize that every tarot card has layers and layers and layers of meaning, you can quickly find that everything you need to know about the question or the results you want are in 3, 4, or even 9 cards. So yeah, I agree. I like to keep it simple. And then also, I don't like clutter very much. So More cards, more clutter, right? So what specific practices have helped you to develop your, not just your tarot practice, because obviously when it comes to tarot, there's still the meditation and daily practice, but what practices have you used to help with your psychic and intuitive skills?
Yeah, so I've experimented with all different kinds of things. And I think when I made the most progress, it was when I was in this group. And I think there was maybe about 10 of us, sometimes 7 of us in that group. And we would meet once every 2 weeks and we would sit in a circle and we would practice mediumship, we would practice psychometry. I think a couple times we practiced remote viewing. We'd practice all these different kind of psychic skills and techniques, and we would do readings on each other. And it was just a really wonderful way to like practice this stuff because that's how you develop your intuition and your psychic
Absolutely.
ability.
Hmm.
Play around, practice, let go of expectations. The more relaxed you are about it, the more results you're probably going to get. And so I made the most progress when I was doing that. And that was years ago. And I think I got another job and I couldn't attend those meetings anymore. And so I stopped going. And I really miss that group. I don't think they're still practicing, but I had a lot of progress when I was working in a group like that. But it's interesting because sometimes I find when I'm trying to develop my intuition and my psychic skills that I don't get very far when I'm like pushing, when I'm trying.
Yep.
It's sometimes when I do other stuff that's like you wouldn't think is even related to intuition that I start to see progress. So, for example, um, I find that, I mean, daily meditation is really helpful. I just started a few months ago, I started working with these guided meditations. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Monroe Institute
Mm-mm.
and Hemisync, but they have this meditation program called the Gateway Experience. And I'm not really sure how to describe it exactly, but it helps you meditate. There's meditations on like how to do remote viewing, how to do astral projection, like out of body experiences, um, all different kinds of things. And just in exploring those tapes, I've really come a long way and noticed a lot of progress. I think also being able to really be fully in your body and in the
Mhm.
present moment is really helpful in developing your intuition and your psychic ability. And I think sometimes that seems counterintuitive because when we want to tap into our psychic stuff, it's like this thing that's kind of out there in the energy field. But if you're not rooted in your body and in the here and now, it's really hard to connect to the psychic realm, to the
Yeah.
astral realm or wherever. So I find like again, like exercise, like physical things, like just like being present in my body, being really open to pleasure as
Yes.
well. Just being like, yeah, being able to experience pleasure and just being able to like stop and smell the roses and to slow down. All those things help me develop my intuition and my psychic abilities.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
In 2019, I went through this interesting phase where I was following the whole Abraham Hicks thing and just like doing what I love. I was
Mhm.
going to Disneyland all the time. Well, 2018 too. So going to Disneyland a lot, going to different theme parks, hanging out with people that I enjoyed, eating what I loved without worrying about whether it was healthy or not. And what was interesting, oh, and I was doing this meditation that I had channeled that's focused on love and joy. So I was doing that every day. And I found that my connection to the other side became stronger than ever before. I was able to sense people's intentions and whatnot so much faster. And so when you mentioned pleasure, it's incredible to me how that energy of pleasure, of joy, of bliss really kind of supercharges your psychic abilities. And so that was something I wasn't anticipating at all.
Yeah, no, I remember when I was meeting with this group, one of the first things we would do at the beginning of our meetings is we would all try to bring our energy up because especially when we were doing mediumship, we felt like you got to bring your energy up to
Yes.
the level to, connect with spirits on the other side. And so I would try to think of like happy things or things that made me feel joyful, or even like laughter and like finding something funny kind of brings your energy up.
Right.
And it is amazing how like just that energy of joyfulness, humor, like fun, doing things that feel fun really helps to kind of bring your energy up.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I want to ask everyone, like, tell us your favorite dad jokes. Tell us your favorite memory. Put it all in the comments. And maybe over the last like 5 minutes, we can read those and get our energy up too. Cause like when you can share those things with other people, it is fantastic. And then also, there's been a really fun conversation happening in the chat on both Facebook and YouTube. So people are talking about tarot and crystals. And then Joshua here says, I'm sorry, guys, I'm geeking out over stones, tarot, and oracle cards. Joshua, you don't ever, ever, ever have to apologize for that, especially on this channel. Are you kidding? Like, we geek out over that too. In fact, go be sure that you guys go to Kate's YouTube channel, Daily Tarot Girl, and you can geek out over there too. She's all about it. It's all good. But yeah, you don't ever have to apologize for that. You're in good company when it comes to that here. So we do have one last question because you mentioned astral projection. So we'll fit this in. We've only got 5 minutes left on the show, but we'll see if we can fit this in. So Rosalie is asking, what is your take on sleep paralysis and that needs to astral, or I think she meant that leads to astral projection?
What is my take on sleep paralysis that leads to astral projection? I think my understanding of sleep paralysis, it's when as you're falling asleep, your body becomes relaxed, and usually what happens is your mind shuts off as well. So your body shuts off, your mind shuts off, and your body obviously your body doesn't shut off, but you're not using your muscles, you're not moving around, right? So but when you astral project, it's like you keep your mind awake and aware, but your body shuts down. So you actually kind of have to have that state of your mind awake, but your body is asleep in order to astral project. That's of course not the same as sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is where you wake up from sleep and you can't move your body. I've never experienced that myself, but I know it's actually quite common. Like a lot of
scary.
People.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah. Sleep paralysis is definitely not one of my favorite things. I've never had astral projection happen as a result. I was very much in my body and terrified when that happened. So, okay. So there was a question. Again, we've got 3 minutes left, but we're gonna do this. So Karen's asking, what is your suggestion on learning tarot? I find that I get overwhelmed or can't focus on what the meaning is that I'm getting.
All right. So I think most people, when they want to learn tarot, they focus on learning how to read tarot. Start by just exploring your deck. So start by spending time with your cards, like looking at your cards, journaling about your cards. You can choose one card a day or one card a week, depending on how much time you've got. And just sit with that one card and journal about it. Write about how you feel about that card. If there's a figure on that card, see if you can like have a conversation with that figure, see what it tells you. And then if you've got a tarot book or a good website to go to, you can look that card up and learn as much as you can about that card. But it's important, I think, to have a personal experience with the cards. So to really sit with each card and just let it speak to you and just observe it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to dialogue with the cards. You can just look at all the symbols and the aspects and the colors on that card. And I think by doing that, you kind of take the pressure off. You're just exploring your cards. You're exploring them. You're sitting with them. You're maybe writing about them. I think start there, and then that will kind of lead to really understanding your cards on a more personal level.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's great advice. So, Kate, thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. We have more questions pouring in, but we are out of time. So, we're definitely going to have you back as a guest because this was wonderful. And it's always good to see you. It's always fun to talk tarot with you.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for having me on your show. It's been so much fun chatting with you. And I love you just have this like fun spirit. I love I love your sense of humor and your laid back approach to all of this. So thank you so much
Aw.
for having me on your show.
Well, thank you. And I could say the same thing about you. Same thing. Good sense of humor. I love how we both have very similar approaches when it comes to tarot and simplifying it and how to read it and whatnot. So yeah, always nice to connect with someone of a similar mindset. So thank you so much. And we will definitely have you back soon. So, for those of you who have been listening, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. Remember, you can always catch us live every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central on the UPRN network at 105.3 FM, New Orleans. And of course, you can join us through the YouTube channel, Facebook page for either UPRN or, of course, Guiding Echoes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Up next is Discovery Paranormal. So stay tuned.